would take attendance, please?
Mrs. Labuda.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mrs. Geiger.
Here.
Mrs. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Sorensen.
Here.
Mr. Ruiz.
Here.
Mr. Samuelson.
Here.
Good morning, okay. Everybody's here.
Good, everybody. Good job.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Okay, under our discussion item, we have some people here from the Solid Waste Committee. We formed a task force about 6 months ago. I asked the task force to come to our meeting this morning. So I'd like to go around the room and introduce them and to thank them for their time. We spent about 6 months and several felt like 100 hours on some of the issues. So if I could just, did you tell us who you?
Miranda Behan.
Amanda Ward.
Carrie Moss.
John Fink.
Barney Huber.
Joe Herschel. Victor.
Hi, Victor. And we also had
Welcome.
Nancy Buck, Ira Cohen, Josh, and Ed McAndrews, and
And Paul Burkhardt.
who is Paul? Oh, Paul is not here, okay.
Bill Cutler.
And Bill Cutler.
No,
Okay, so I want to thank the committee, so again, thank you, and let's see if we can move forward with some positive results. As I mentioned, the reason why the solid waste fee was put into effect a couple years ago was because we wanted to try to get the tax exempt, more revenue. We wanted to be able to tax or have a fee on the tax exempt. However, where's Nancy? Over the years, actually we thought that would be a significant increase, but it turned out to be, we make about $250,000, Nancy? Roughly on the tax exempt. Now, when we talk, oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie, I missed you. Bonnie's on the committee.
She said hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Bonnie represents the assessors. What happened was, when we talked about tax exempt, it's not just the bungalow colonies, it's the firehouses, it's the veterans buildings, and all the municipalities. So when we talk about tax exempt, it's not just the bungalows. So having said that, over the last 2 years, we have a grievance committee, and there are people in the community, lots of people in the community, that feel that the solid waste user fee was not equitable. So the task force met for the last 6 months, and we went and we talked about commercial properties, residential, we talked about vacant land, we talked about a whole host of issues. So today the committee is here, and I want to have them discuss well, actually one of the recommendations that came through the committee. So Bonnie, could we start with you, since you represent the assessors, so go ahead.
Well, the assessors, we just feel that the property tax code system just doesn't work, because it's, with your commercials, you're charging the same rate for all commercials. Your residential, your 1 family, 2 family, 3 families are all paying the same. There's parcels with multiple homes that are just paying the one fee, and we feel that the ad valorem would be the best way to, you know, to collect that money, would be fair for everybody.
The ad valorem is the way it used to be?
The way it used to
The way it should be.
Okay, Joe, John, you wanna jump in here, John? Any comments?
Essentially the same thing. As I understand it, the law was written so it says fair and equitable. There's absolutely no way that the class codes can be fair and equitable. The ad valorem, in the past, there was money, especially from imported waste, that was used to keep taxes reduced, the real property taxes reduced. Those particular properties all got benefits of the excess revenue over cost from the landfill. At this point, by using the class codes, one that has, say, a $1 million residence or a several $1 million business is paying a small amount compared to an individual owner, and ad valorem goes back to spread the equity, in my estimation anyhow, between what was gained as a benefit years ago and the fairness in paying back what was borrowed. I do believe perhaps there should be some follow-ups though on the overall solid waste system to see what might be done in the future.
I think that when we come to some type of conclusions today or by, actually the resolution has to be done, is it November, Nancy? And in November, that's why I wanted this group to come to this committee today to give recommendations to the legislature. Whatever direction we decide to move forward with, we'll do in November, and then in the spring, we've had many conversations about a regional approach, or does the county want to stay in the garbage business? So for today's meeting, I just want to stick to the one issue for now, and then in the spring, we'll discuss those issues, John, but you're right, we need to look at the future, not just for today. And Cora, Cora, do you just mind if I just go around to the committee?
Oh,
and
sure,
then we'll-
sorry.
Okay, did anybody else have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to
Gary?
comment that I believe the present system with the fee is certainly unequitable, particularly with the Walmart and the mom and pop that we discussed. Multi-dwellings where they're capped at $1,800 and maybe should be paying $4,000 or $5,000 or even higher with trailer parks or something like that. Going to an ad valorem, I think certainly is the way, like John mentioned, that's the fair way. And that's how you get the rest of the revenues that pay for all the things you have to do. And that's what's been deemed fair. So, I wouldn't worry about pinpointing certain areas. It's so inequitable on the other side that don't worry about vacant land. Yes, they're gonna have to pay a little bit, but large tracts of lands, farmers do get agricultural exemptions. Hunting clubs get forestry exemptions, so they get their benefits. And if they have to pay a little because of what they gained in the past, they should. And expensive houses or something like that, I heard there was some concerns about that. Well, if you're a rich person and have over $1 million house, you may have to pay a little bit more. But it seems to me, from what I could do with my figures, it would take a $750,000 house to approach the $120 fee that they currently pay. So it's gotta be substantial, and I don't think it should be a concern. So I would advocate this plan that we put forward. I know there's been, it was brought up by Ira of maybe phasing it in. I can agree with that, either a 3 or 4 year plan. And I really believe that's what the legislative body should do.
Sam, would you just mind if I ask the committee to speak, then I'm gonna go to you in the legislative session. Joe, did you have any comment?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Is a couple of thoughts. Is we actually went back and forth in the beginning, is trying to, with the commercial, with the mobile home parks, and we went back and forth and trying to actually put a fee like structure on square footage and the amount of homes and units and everything else. We sort of went around in a circle and wasn't able to come to a conclusion because of the property codes. It was my opinion that I feel that whoever is a property owner within the county should bear the cost on whatever, if we're trying to raise $6 million or whatever, should be borne on all the property owners in Sullivan County itself. I think that the task force did a good job in trying to review everything and trying to find out all options. It's too bad that we can't have the best of both worlds, where really some of the nonprofit organizations, will not, is eventually, it's too bad that they won't be able to partake in this in the 3 years. And I think Ira might be talking about the phasing in of what he came up with. But ad valorem is definitely absolutely the way to go.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Amanda or Miranda, do you have any comments or?
I mean, I think I just wanna say, we were charged with, I think, something that was quite complex and challenging. And I do think everyone did a great job in listening to the information that was faced with us. And I think that coming in, it wasn't fair, the system, the present system, and I absolutely advocate and support going back to the ad valorem system,
Okay.
so.
Hold on, anybody else, missing anybody else in the committee? Sam?
Just by way of background, because
Yes.
you've got to start knowing why it happened. And it was originally done because there was a feeling that by doing a access fee, user fee, whatever you want to call it, you'd pick up tax exempts which hadn't been paying their fair share of the difference between what we raised through a tipping fee and what we were raising through general taxation. Well, it turns out that number is not as big as anybody thought it was going to be. I forget how, the $250,000 raise?
280.
It's less than 6%.
Rounded off to 300,000. But the irony is, in picking up tax exempts, we also picked up a lot that we didn't even focus on originally. You're talking about the firehouses, you're talking about, you know, the service organizations and things of that sort, which nobody really was focusing on some years ago when they put this together. So you've got service organizations that now have a fee that they never had. And in order to make this work, to catch that $300,000, you wound up with a fee that's distributed throughout the rest of the county that you can't make equitable. There's just no way of really doing it on the tax code. It's not related to garbage production, it's not related to anything else. If you go back to a year before this was done, what happened was the tipping fee raised X dollars. There was a difference between that X dollars and what the cost of the system was. That difference was part of your general tax rate. It was part of, it came out of the general fund. It was raised by taxes, not a special tax, the regular county tax. What everybody's referring to as ad valorem is the regular county tax. That's how the system worked back then. Problem now, and Ira can go through the detail, now that we're raising approximately $5 million through this special fee.
Six.
6.
Almost six.
Let's round it to six.
If you abolished it all in 1 year, the hit on the tax rate would be very substantial.
10.5%.
So the recommendation from some of the members of the committee was to phase it out over a period of a few years. Ira, you wanna expand on that?
I would just clarify that, for the several months that we met, there was little, there was little to no discussion about going back, you know, scrapping the entire thing and going back to strictly ad valorem. That only came up at the last meeting because, having gone through all the other options, we realized that they weren't really viable. As has been said, there's really no way to make it equitable unless you get into complex, multi-tier, you know, try to base it on square footage or anticipated volume or whatever. In the end, it was a suggestion that we just go back to the ad valorem. At that point, I said, look, if you don't wanna do it in 1 year, you can phase it in. After that meeting, and having had further discussions with Josh and others, it may make more sense if you're gonna do it, just to do it all at once and get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, would it be a true 10% increase? I think.
Hold on.
You need to, the committee asked staff to kind of come up with the interaction and the interplay by town with having to raise taxes on the one hand by, it equates to about just say 10.5% versus then you'd zero out the user fee on a tax bill. So
Right.
the 120 goes to zero. If you did it all in 1 year or however else you did it,
Right.
the 300 commercial goes to zero. So we have some charts by town that kind of shows the interplay. So yes, you would have to raise taxes 10.5% if you did it in 1 year, but the 120 or the 300 or the 1800 disappears.
Right.
So there's an interplay there. It's not
Yeah,
just.
so for argument's sake, one township, it might be 2%, another township might be 6%. Is that what you're saying?
But it has to average out to 10.
But it does it washes itself
Well,
out from a fee to a tax.
There's a break even there. There'll be a break even on the residents and the commercial from where, on an assessment basis, that where it's a wash. Like, they'd in turn have $120 in taxes, but at the same time, they would lose the 120
Right.
of his user.
Is that about the average?
Well, you'll
Because
see.
when the plan was put in, the residential fee piece was about the equivalent, a little bit less than what the tax increase would have been to the average. So the outliers were where the differential was. So
You'll see
you know,
on
the the left and the right of the spectrum were where it was different, but the average is, when the fee was developed, that's how the number got developed, it was to be a net zero impact to the mean.
So Janet put, I'm gonna send this around, Janet put
And if you
together
want true
a
equity,
chart.
why wouldn't we just go to taking the cost of the, running the system and divide it by the tons and charge that per ton? Why are we going back to taxing
Yes, yes, yeah.
everybody? Let's go to a true user fee, go to a true tipping fee.
Yes,
And
down
bring,
to-
well, it may cost $150 to bring your garbage, but why are we asking, we'll go back
Burn it in
to
the barrel
taxing?
like they used to.
Do the committee members wanna chart, give
Start that
Gene
crap.
pass these to the,
If you have extras,
okay.
Absolutely.
That would end.
Nancy, did you wanna?
Killing
Well, the one thing
Hold
that-
on, folks, I want everybody to have the opportunity to speak, because this is real, this is, it's very complex. Pass those down, Courtney, okay?
More?
Then the legislators can take a couple weeks to absorb this, and then but we need to have some recommendations before, November, so, hold on, please, keep the, how many did you make, 20? Okay, just, Nancy,
The only
guys,
thing is, I wanna stress again so that the legislators.
hold on, folks,
understand
listen, and I'm sorry, just one at a time. Nancy, go ahead, then.
When they're talking about the 10.5% increase, it's because of the tax cap. And when it's on its own individual line on the tax bill, it's not included as a tax cap. So what they're trying to say is, if you were charged $120 for your home, your $120 now is up there in that 10%. It's because it was a separate line item, that's why. It's not it is a true rate in the tax cap when you move that line up to $6 million. You know what I'm saying? There's certain things that generate a tax cap. Right now, this isn't in there, so if you take it off the line item and put it up into the ad valorem, that's why your tax cap is going up.
Well, and that's the whole, the irony of losing that revenue that Jonathan just mentioned was one of the reasons why this whole thing was instituted, in my understanding, is that there's a lot of summer usage that is kind of getting off scot-free, other than what they generate.
Well, they do pay for their generation,
But everybody else does too. Whenever I go to the recycling center, I pay just like everybody else, regardless of my tax.
right, so it's like special districts, in my opinion, tax exempt, all of tax exempts pay special districts. They have the same usage of ambulances, fire trucks, et cetera, and they're exempt of that. This was kind of a layer mimicking that they were trying to get them to pay special districts.
But I think the thing that I need to get a bit more clarity on is the difference between when you're putting something in as a tax as opposed to a fee, right? Because you're talking about a special district is tied to a particular service. Therefore, is it a tax or is it a fee? That's
tax.
Okay, so it's still considered a tax and it's not, because whether you're the government center or the Boy Scouts or whoever, you then don't have to pay for any, access to the recycling center because you're tax exempt, as opposed to you're still generating,
Never could have been as.
cost. What?
We couldn't have done it as a special district because we were raising money to pay off debt service on pre-existing debt. You can't create a district which will contribute to pre-existing debt. That was one reason why you couldn't do this as a special district in the first place, and the other reason is there are some solid waste districts within the county that you could not have superseded without their permission in a couple of the localities.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is at what point do you bite the bullet and say this is a fee, as opposed to
When you say it's a fee, I mean, what we
tied to
have,
property tax?
this is a fee. What we have now is a fee.
But we just can't charge that fee to people who generate the garbage. That's where I see the problem, right?
We charge a tipping fee for that.
Yeah,
And
this
anybody
fee,
pays it when you go.
Right, so it's,
we're supported basically half and half right now.
Okay.
By tipping fee generates over 5 million, and the access fee generated the other half, the 5 to 6 million, somewhere in there. They're very closely tied together right now. To run the landfills, about 10 million, or, I'll use easy numbers, 10 million, 5 from access fee, 5 from tipping fee. If you want to go to strictly tipping fee, then you would have to raise 10 million in there. We currently have $90 a ton for our tipping fee. That would go to somewhere between $180 and $200 a ton. And that's, in a basic nutshell, that's the way we would have to do it.
So in the overall equation, that 10 million, how much of that is debt service and how much of that is operational?
Ballpark 4, it might be a little bit under now, but there's between 3.5 and 4 million debt service payments probably.
Because I think if we untied those two, what Sam was saying, you can't use this to cover debt service if it's strictly a fee. So I think that's part of where the tangle comes in.
Special district.
Special district.
Only, that's a special district. Remember, there are 3 things going on. You have debt service, you have maintenance of the closed landfill, which will go on for 30 years, whether you have the transfer station or not. Those 2 costs will go, the debt service will go on till it's expired. The maintenance of the closed landfill, which is a significant number, will go on until roughly 30 years from now, depending on what the DEC says. The third number is the actual operation of the transfer station and the hauling of the garbage out of the county. So there are 3 components to the landfill operation. I'm leaving out recycling for the moment. But those are the 3 major components that you're funding. You're funding part of it, half of it, of those 3 components, with what comes over the scale, and the other half we're presently funding through this fee.
As Ed said, yeah.
So back me up, I'm trying to get a better handle on this. If we go back to this ad valorem piece, which has been suggested by the gentleman here, in fact, the impact on $50,000 assessment will be huge, because just taking the 3 towns within my district, if I'm looking at Neversink and Rock, I need to look at it from a way that I can understand. If I'm looking at the impact on a $50,000 assessment, if I look at Neversink, I'm right now paying $70.45 per 50,000, and if I switch to this other piece, it'll be $250.45?
No, maybe let Josh explain.
Okay.
Hold on. We're on the first sheet, folks. Go ahead.
Okay, because
The-
it's not making sense.
This shows,
Let,
What we did to come up with this is, it would be slightly different if you did this on how it would impact 14, but with what data we have now, we basically just inflated last year's levy, or this current year's levy, by $6 million. Ran it through our tax abstract program, and it spit out basically these new 2013 rates as if we had $6 million more in the levy last year. So then that third column is the break-even assessment for the residences. So that's the break-even assessment by town, where there would be no impact whether you raise taxes as 10.5% or kept the 120 in place. Anything below that is going to have a net benefit. Anyone above that is going to have a cost, an additional cost above and beyond the 120 that they're paying today.
Josh, that does reflect the equalization rate.
I basically used the existing, today's levy that we raised for this year, I just inflated it by $6 million, so it has all the assessments by town and the equalization rates by town already built in.
Ira and then John.
So
Ira-
the negatives,
hold
the
on.
negatives you see are what you would benefit, and it takes into the 120, so the math in here would be, alright, you're losing
So
the
give an
120, but
example.
taxes are going, so like in Bethel, that $50,000 impact, the 120 goes to 0, and their taxes go up by the difference of that, so their taxes will only be going up by whatever the 120 minus $59 is, so they would in essence have a net benefit when you zero out the 120 and raise taxes 10% of $59. They would come out ahead $59. And as you slide over, because Bethel's break even is 98,000. Once for 2,000 at the 100,000 mark, they're going to then pay $2 more and $63 more as you slide across the sheet. Just note on Forsberg and Neversink, because of their equalization rates are so low, we had to adjust that, and you'll see at the bottom. Where you're seeing 50, they're all factored down by a tenth in Forsberg's case, and a 20th in Neversink's case. So you can see Neversink's average break-even assessment is $6,000. That's because their equalization rate is on the order of 3, versus an average town is probably in the 60s or 70s. So that's, you have to, if we used 50, there's probably very few houses that are even have a taxable assessment of 50,000 in Neversink. So their column is really divided by 20, and Forsberg is divided by 10 to kind of show you what would really be going on. Because you may have a $100,000 full value house that's only being assessed at $3,000 in Neversink, taxable assessment. So we had to adjust those two towns due to because if we left it at 50, it would have huge numbers in the 50, but no one would have assessments at 50.
Kitty, does that make it a little more clear for you, or?
I'm still in the mudland.
Okay, Ira, and then John. Hold on, it's very complicated. Yes, Ira?
The only thing I would add to what Josh said, because I don't think you were focusing on the parentheses indicating where it says an impact means a savings. So if you say the impact 5892 means you pay, instead of 120, you pay 120 minus 5892. That would be your new cost if you had a $50,000 assessment. But generally speaking, I think it's fair to say that this is more equitable because people whose assessed properties are assessed at a lower value will pay less than they're paying now. And people whose properties are assessed for a higher value, whether it's residential or commercial, will pay more.
Well, according to these figures, I'm gonna be paying about $7 more. Big deal.
Okay, John?
Both Josh and Ira, the numbers in parentheses are actually a credit as opposed, I just want to be sure that was.
It's a net. Yes. Okay. Alan?
Yeah, I think there's two components of the equity. There's, this is originally was set up as a user fee, so there's some inclination that the amount that you're paying has some relationship to the amount of garbage that you're producing. So you can have, a large warehouse that, recycles everything, produces very little solid waste. They might have a very high assessed value, paying much more than, a restaurant that's generating a considerable amount of solid waste. So I'm not sure that's necessarily equitable. There's two parts of that argument, but I point that out for a reason. The system that we currently have is a hybrid system. There's the tipping fee, that's one component of it, and then there's the current user fee. It's not access fee. Just reading. All right, it's got to change the access fee.
Access.
So you have the access fee, which provides access to the system, which we're all funding. It's not perfect, but I think in developing it, I think there was a recognition that we might not be able to get to a perfect model. If you went solely to the tipping fee, the system would cease to operate because the market will never bear a $200 tipping fee. The trucks will just leave the county and dump elsewhere. I think all the legislators know this, but there's no obligation on behalf of the county to operate a solid waste system.
Correct.
That's actually responsibility of the municipalities. It is something that the county historically got involved in, and there are certain efficiencies that accrue by having a county-wide system. There's no question about that. I don't know that we're ever going to get to a perfectly equitable system, but I think if the consensus is to move in the direction of ad valorem, I think you'd have to phase that in over time, because I think to try to do it on 1 year, for anyone at the higher assessed values, it could be quite a substantial impact. And I think you also have to then begin to take a harder look before you decide to move in that direction of, thoroughly looking at the equity issue in terms of some of the relationship between the value of the property and how much solid waste is actually being generated. That's where I think the hybrid of having the tipping fee helps to provide that balance. Because at the end of the day, if you're producing more weight, by having the tipping fee as a component of the system, you're paying more, and that you will be paying more. At least, based on the amount of solid waste that you use.
I think it's helpful though when, Ed broke it down, what goes to what, because if you're kind of taking from Peter to pay for Paul, as opposed to separating out, this is what we owe on the bond, this is what we need to pay on our debt service, this is what we owe on the maintenance for the closed, and this is what we owe, rather than tangling three completely
The
separate
solid waste
issues.
budget is set up that way, it breaks out operating costs, debt service costs and others.
And I think that's how you apply the fees, whether they're fees or taxes toward those different things as opposed to trying to lump it all together because you'll never get that.
Well, I think initially, when the fee was created, I think it was created to pay the debt, the existing debt. As the debt reduces, the fee should go down. But as the fee goes down, because your expenses are gonna stay the same, you still got operating expenses. Your ad valorem fee, what you're raising in taxes is gonna go up anyway.
That's why that furthers my argument in separating them out so that you are having
But
separate
we didn't make that
streams.
adjustment.
Well,
We didn't reduce the fee to reflect the reduced debt.
We empowered a panel to make their recommendations. They all seem to be in agreement that we should go ad valorem. I believe we should take their recommendation.
Cindy?
I still have too many questions and to review
I
the
was gonna
actual impacts
Mhm.
on, because the bottom line is we're trying to bring in revenue because we have, the costs.
We're
One
not trying to
question I
bring in-
had, as
ahead.
far as the debt service, when does that expire?
I can get you the exact schedule, but it goes to zero sometime in like 2026, around there somewhere. 2023
That's
maybe,
quite
it's in
far
that
out.
neighborhood, I'll get you the exact.
2022.
And I mean, as far as, looking at the impacts per 50,000 of assessment, I mean, in my district, I'm looking at much higher than that, so, I have to understand the implications for the larger landowners as far as the amount of dollars in increase. And I understand it's a big challenge, but, I'm not ready to, agree until I have some better.
I'll just comment, there's three
Okay.
actual sheets.
Right.
The second sheet, there's a type on the sec comment, it's 13 rate on the top there, but it does the same math but on a commercial. So and it uses the 300 being just going away in the place for tax increase. And then the last one is based on taxable assessed value for vacant land or even if it's farmland or anything. And that doesn't have a reduction because they're not paying necessarily anything into that 6 million now. So those will all be costs, not negatives, those should be costs.
Okay,
You
so.
mean all the parentheses
They're
are
all
actual-
additional
Yes,
costs.
okay.
I think they just didn't flip the sign.
My suggestion is that the legislators take this, this form. If you have questions, you can meet with Josh or whomever, or Nancy, or whatever, however you wanna work it out. But we do have another month to absorb it and take a look at it, and I just wanted the committee to come, like I said, today, because if we're going to change it, we need to do the resolution in November. Nancy, I'm sorry, did you want it?
You do, because, and then, I mean, if you're not gonna go with that, you have to remember that the local law now has vacant land. So that's another consideration if you don't go this route.
And I just want to remind everybody that we've been meeting for 6 months and the legislators were invited. I wanted to thank those who were able to attend. But like I said, this is very complex, so we're going to need a couple weeks to absorb it. But is there any more questions from the committee? The task force, I just want to thank them again for their time. They've been very
I just want to mention, it was a nice cross-section of the county, I think, on the committee, and it was really nice working with them, very good discussions.
Thank you.
So Nancy, just.
And we're not finished yet, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, but I just
Well-
wanted to clarify, with
Sure.
Nancy, what you had said in
That's why I
November, the
believe we should
resolution
follow
for
your
ad valorem.
recommendation.
And if not, then the option with this vacant land,
Well, if you're gonna stick with the local law that you have existing, then you have to pass a resolution to set your rates. The local law does have a provision in that for vacant land.
But we don't have to exercise.
Right.
But what you're saying is that any changes that are made would have to be then done through a local law with this ad valorem if it was reverted back to the original, way it was done. With the public hearing and all that before the tax year.
Right, and either way, though, you have to make a decision because
Yeah.
you have to pass a resolution.
I just
Ira?
want to emphasize, I'm glad we brought up that point, because, as I said, we spent most of the time this year talking about how we could keep the access fee, but change it in some ways to make it more equitable. So if you don't adopt if you don't scrap it totally and go to the ad valorem fee, then we're back to that discussion about how should we change the access fee, if we're gonna change it at all. Should we create categories so that bigger stores pay more than $300? Should we eliminate, should we put a fee on vacant land? Should we eliminate the caps? Should we have a unit fee? All of these questions that we talked about. And that would require a whole different discussion and some decisions to be made.
Bonnie, did you want to say something? I'm sorry, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Anybody else, anybody from the committee? Okay, so I need to move on, we have a couple of resolutions, but thank you again, you're free to leave now, and we'll be in touch.
Just remember, there's nothing free.
You're free to leave.
Thank you so much. Yep, no, someone had to get out of here now, it's such a my.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks. You'll be getting an email from me very shortly, until our next meeting. Okay, I did forget to mention somebody that's visiting us today. I have Ed McAndrews' son, who's a senior in high school. We want to welcome him. He's thinking about maybe running for office, and I discouraged him from that. No, but welcome and thank you for coming. Now you see what your father does. He's so busy all day, and he's doing a great job. But okay, on to the resolutions. I'm sorry.
Can you be an intern?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed, did you have anything you want to bring up before the resolutions? You have some-
I wanted to bring something up. Ed and
Go
I
ahead.
discussed it a little bit earlier. We had a presentation at the last full board meeting from the Go Rail people.
Oh, yes, mm-hmm.
Okay, when I was at NISAC, I spoke with Pam Mann, who's the national coordinator. She wanted to know if our county would like to get involved in a study being done by Cornell.
Uh-huh.
We would just have to provide them with some data, which Ed and I discussed a little bit, about the conditions of the roads, the bridges, mileage, things like that. Ed said he wouldn't have a problem giving them data if we would like to do that. It might help us, we might be able to get some funds out of this after the study's done. It doesn't cost anything.
If it's free, we'll do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So,
Everybody okay with that? Ed, could you have the time to?
Yeah,
answer?
a lot of it's basic information, bridge
Okay.
conditions, stuff we have.
Right.
Our RSMS program on our roads, so.
I'll
Okay.
make copies of it for
And
all the
give it-
legislators.
Okay, good, and put it in our box?
Yep.
Emery, thanks. Okay, Ed, the first, anything else did you have on your agenda before we go to the resolutions? Nothing else you wanna bring up? Sidewalks in front? Anything you wanna bring up?
Yeah, I could just give you a
Okay.
quick update. We are repairing, as many of you may have seen, the sidewalks out front. We're not trying to replace them this year, but we took out the worst areas where there were tripping hazards and broken concrete, and our guys are replacing those right now. We'll have those done soon, and hopefully by a couple years before we have to replace the entire front walkway as we did in the back. So our guys are out there doing a good job.
Well, I mean, this is the county seat, and when people drive by, I mean, I told Ed, we can even, to have those barriers there with those cones, I think is just really, that's a mess. Our building should not look like that, so we're gonna patch it up for now, and
Yeah.
hopefully we get more funding, we'll, what about the leak? You wanna discuss the leak? Cause we haven't met since the leak.
Yes, I was actually gonna go a little more into next month, but I'll,
Well, you wanna wait then?
yeah, I think,
Okay,
and
we'll
we'll
wait till next month,
go
because we're a
over
little
some
behind.
infrastructure
Okay.
conditions.
Okay, the first resolution is to authorize the award of an engineering service for the design of the airport drainage improvement at Sullivan County Airport. Jonathan, Allen, all in favor?
I
Any-
want a
Sure,
discussion.
sure,
Mhm.
just discussion, go ahead, Kitty.
Okay, when we, when we did the whole thing with the water, got a well, improved that engineering didn't include that?
This is different. This has nothing to do with the water system at all. This is drainage issues where we have subsurface drain pipes and stuff like that that are failing, and then some out along our perimeter road where we do our inspections out there. We have some large culverts in there that are failing. They're talking about repairing that, armoring up the banks on that. Nothing to do with a water supply system, which is the well, and bringing potable water and non-potable firefighting water to the airport. This is rainwater coming down, storm water, getting rid of that.
I understand what drainage is, I'm just.
Right. They're completely.
Seems odd to me that when you sink in a well, you don't know what potentially could be flowing into.
This is
it.
nowhere near
That's
it.
nothing to do with that.
We're not, this water wouldn't even get to that well. There's nothing in that vicinity. This is completely unrelated to that project.
So this is not under any, part of the partial, and I'm putting partial in air quotes, shutdown. The money's already, like, you spend the money out, it's a reimbursable grant.
Yeah, this is not currently affected.
Okay, well, I think it's a good deal for the county to pay $3,000 and get a $68,000.
Yeah, we've gotten as
You
low
did
as
the vote?
2.5 cents. We're currently
Okay,
at
stop
5
it.
cents on the dollar with this funding.
Good.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, any opposed? Okay.
7-zip.
Thank you. The second resolution is to authorize the execution of a contract with Poly Paving. Alan, Jean, any questions? All in favor, any opposed?
7-zip.
The third resolution is to rescind a drainage easement along County Route 14. Alan and Scott, did you wanna
Yeah, this-
mention that real quick, what's going on down there?
This is one we did drainage along County Road 14 in White Lake,
Which road is that?
near where the old school was. This is
Oh,
right off
so-
17B, just in from the light on 17B, County Road, or State Touring Route 55, County Road 14.
Is that by Scott's house?
By the custard stand.
Yeah, right,
Ah.
just below the custard stand. Actually, it was an easement that went to the lake on a drainage. We realigned it, replaced all the piping. We're getting rid of this part of it. We realigned it down one property line. It used to kind of, I don't know how it ever came up with it, but zigzagged all over the place. We straightened it out so we could work more effectively on it.
Okay, all in favor?
I just-
Oh, Cindy, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
As far, did we move, I'm sorry.
For number 3, we send it drainage, easement along, go ahead, take your time.
Okay, this is for Poly Paving, that
Mhm.
one? Okay, I jumped ahead, sorry.
No, this is,
No, this is-
Foley was
no.
number 2.
This is
This
warrant
is
number
number
3.
3.
Okay, that's the one I wanna talk about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The rescue and firefighting vehicle on the bottom, it's a county share.
We're not on that.
No, we're not on, that's the
Okay.
next one, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, there's nothing on those.
No,
There's
there
nothing
is.
on that.
I'm on
I thi- I think this-
32309.
That one I think is not, that doesn't match the cover page.
Oh, it's just been attached.
Those are wrong.
Probably an old resolution,
Oh,
because they attached the old
Yeah, it's fine.
resolution.
I was gonna say, the ARF is done. We shouldn't have anything.
Also, just as a heads up, when I was at this, conference, workshop yesterday, grand workshop
She's
on,
looking at this.
anything that's coming through the Department of
Which
Homeland Security,
references something.
any vehicles,
This one?
there's a freeze on any vehicle purchase, and any exception has to be okayed direct, this is just from that road sheet, has to be okayed directly by the Commissioner of Department of Homeland Security.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so all in
Before
favor of
I
that
should-
resolution?
The drainage easement.
The drainage, we're on 3, okay. Number 4,
All in
resolution.
favor?
Yeah, all in favor, okay.
I missed that.
Yeah,
So, that's this page that came in.
that was just a
Okay.
mistake.
Okay, number 4, resolution to authorize an agreement with the New York State Department of Transportation for County Road 173 project. I need a motion. Alan?
I'll second.
Jean? Ed, did you wanna?
This is the resolution supplemental agreement, County Road 173.
It's the Raleigh Road, right?
No, this is Lower Broadway, Monticello.
that's-
It's just
yeah,
below
okay.
Lower Broadway
Okay, I
out
got
to
you.
the Apollo
All right.
Plaza.
Where does it stop? Where does it's a county road the whole length?
It is from about Rockridge Cemetery, where the cemetery is
Yeah.
along Rockridge, from there down past Bridgeville, past Ski Hill,
Yeah,
down
that's
into
the
there
one.
and starting up the other side of the hill there. That's where County
Oh,
Road
okay.
173 runs from there to
Can I
there.
have a motion? Okay, all in
It's-
favor? Any opposed?
7-0.
And the last resolution is to authorize the payment rate for the centerline miles for the
Motion.
contract year July 13 to 2014. Jean,
John.
second. Ed?
This is the
That's
rate
on.
we pay the town. The towns plow approximately half our road system. This sets the rates. We have a 3-year contract with the towns to do so. The towns, this will set the rate. We do it annually if there's a need to change. Their rate is based on what New York State pays us to plow 97 the previous year. So if we don't have a rate increase, we wouldn't do this. If New York State DOT decides to pay us more, then we pay the towns more the subsequent year. And we base it on that. In the past, we used to negotiate with each town separately, and that became,
Pain in the butt.
yeah, out of 13, I think 13 towns plow for us, so it became quite a challenge to arrange different rates. This way, we have it all set in one
But that was
package.
due to, staffing, that you don't have the manpower to go out and the county phased out of it and let the
Yeah, yeah,
county
we
fill
don't,
in.
we certainly, this is half our road system is plowed by the towns right now. There's no way we could.
Well, it's a matter of
rule this at
logistics
this
as well,
point.
I would think,
Yeah.
because, you know, it's easier for the towns, because they're
Yeah.
right there.
Well, we don't wanna be sued.
And it doesn't make sense to run to some of these the outlying roads if the towns are already driving over them. It just makes sense.
Okay, did we vote on that yet?
No.
All in favor? Any opposed?
7-0.
Good morning, Bill Cutler.
Good morning.
How's everything at our recycling center?
Pretty well. We had a very successful household hazardous waste
okay.
collection event on
Mhm.
Sunday, September 22nd. 128 households in the county pre-registered, and 100 folks actually showed up. Our quantities were pretty incredible. We collected 8,200 pounds of household hazardous waste, including some fantastic mercury thermometers, 10 ounces of cyanide,
Whoa.
which the chemists on site informed us were enough to kill, a teaspoon could kill 150 people. So
Oh.
that much cyanide in one place.
Can I
is
get
a-
some of that stuff?
It's
Give me
all
that.
gone. It's safely disposed of, long, far away
Wow.
from here, thankfully.
Did you get the
In
license
Sullivan County.
What town was that in? What town was that in?
There's certain things that we, that.
Whoa, the bird.
Bill, what
this
town was that in?
Yeah.
This material is actually used in a gold plating, probably a hobby jewelry operation
Yeah.
here in
You
the
mean a
county.
pawn shop?
No, 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 no.
Probably a
I'm just
household,
joking.
yeah.
Nice try, though.
It's a good one. These are just some of the examples of things people accumulate in their homes over the years. And I'm glad to say that it got out of circulation before Homeland Security had to be involved.
Yeah.
It was a much more ominous front. The mercury thermometers here, each one, there's about 30 here, were quite large. They had about an ounce of liquid mercury in each one. So that was a pretty huge coup.
And why is that person in the lower right?
That person is a happy participant in the household hazard.
Wasn't someone being dropped off or?
Yeah, separate that out.
No,
Well, you
he
know,
brought
cyanide
stuff
smells
in.
like almonds.
These are just an example of
Not that
some
I should know
satisfied
that.
constituents here in the county.
No.
They enjoy the program. Lastly, we collected some potassium arsenite, which is, well, that's the question I had. It's not good, but Dr. Sarek from the hospital informed me that it was used as an old treatment for syphilis. And I'm gonna leave the colorful description of how it was applied to your imaginations, but this is also now safely out of circulation. Scott, you read my mind.
Ouch is the
Why are you
word.
picking on him?
Ouch is the word that comes to mind.
Correct. Lastly, the county is participating in a national prescription take-back event. This is coming up on Saturday, October 26th. Public Health Nursing and our County Sheriff's Department and others, DPW, are also cooperating. This is a chance for folks to bring in, if you have any controlled or uncontrolled prescription substances and medications, bring these in, drop them off, no questions asked, to Fallsburg PD, Liberty PD,
Yep.
Monticello Police Department at the Ted Strobel Center, and Catskill Regional Medical Center is gonna have drop locations, secure drop locations set up so that you can bring these things in.
Are pharmacies now participating?
Not
in
yet.
Not yet.
You have
Some
to give your
pharmacies
name,
are
so you don't
accepting
wanna
non-controlled
give your name.
You
substances
don't have
back
to.
from
You
their
don't.
Boxes
clients.
are out in the open,
Rock
you
Hill
just drop it
Pharmacy,
in.
for instance, Scott Mace is taking materials back, but there's still federal legislation that prohibits pharmacists from accepting controlled substances back in, even though they can prescribe it, give them out, actually fill a prescription. They're not allowed by law to accept the back end
Yeah,
for disposal yet. That's changing.
I believe there's gonna be another discussion about that at Public Safety. Greg Tavermino will be here, because he's
Fantastic.
setting up the box in Fallsburg.
He sure
Can you
is, and
let-
Greg's on the
leave that
task force as
flyer?
well. I sure can. In fact, these are available via email, and I'll make sure there's a stack out front as well.
And Bill, there's gonna be a box set up so you can just, somebody can just drive by and put the prescriptions in, cause if some people may not wanna be known. If-
Well, it can't be a drive-by, you have to
mean-
walk in. It's
Well-
in a secure location.
Can they drive by and throw it in?
The goal is,
No, 'cause
They'll get arrested
some
for
people may
breaking a
not
window.
wanna-
right, eventually, this drop event, folks will bring materials in.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be probably sitting at the Liberty Police Department for an hour or two. I'm gonna record the materials coming in, but I'm not gonna be recording who brings them in.
Okay,
That's,
people gonna wanna,
that's
okay.
confidential. The idea is to
Right.
get these things out of folks' medicine cabinets so the grandkids don't get them and sell them
Exactly.
and
No.
do dastardly things.
With
with
their
them.
names. Sam?
Or not to
Can-
flush them.
Can people take off the labels on the
Labels, yeah.
prescription before they drop them in?
Yes,
Or redact out.
So that way
Absolutely.
you wouldn't know what's in the prescription
Right.
at all.
absolutely.
Some people like to do that, they take the labels off
Right.
medicine bottles.
Well, you're supposed to.
and so
But then how will you be putting in what
He
is
won't.
going in?
He
Well,
tastes
we're
them.
gonna.
What'd you say, taste them?
Taste them. Hey.
Wait a minute,
Tell
that's
him
not
to
fair,
buy-
I'm always the
buy
guinea
a
pig.
case,
We're
buy a
gonna
That's
make sure
quality
that we ask
control.
folks, and it doesn't have to be a real sound list, what the requirements for disposal are solid prescription or non-prescription medications. When they come in, they're gonna be consolidated and under police escort, taken to the Dutchess County incinerator under requirement, and they'll be incinerated. The long-term goal eventually is to get a permanent drop receptacle or receptacles
idea.
established at police locations around the county, so that in the middle of the night, if somebody has something they need to get rid of, before
Whoa.
it falls into enemy hands, bring it
Yeah.
into that safe location.
So the process is a drop, you're dropping it in, there's no, they don't have to identify themselves or fill out any forms
Nope.
or anything.
No.
You just walk in and
You're
put it
gonna
in a
be
box.
coming in with your supply of stuff, and you're gonna be saying, I have these medications I need to dispose of. And we're gonna say, what are they? And we'll make a note, and thank you very much, have a nice day.
Okay, Cora, you had a question for?
Well, not on, can I change the subject for
Sure.
a second, or are we done?
That's it.
Okay, my understanding was that there was a time when there was someone whose job it was, as the commercial waste haulers would drop off, they had to pay at the time, there was a pay-as-you-go system. And then it sort of, when we came along, there was a lot of, money in arrears where the commercial haulers were in a backlog, and some to the tune of 400,000, and I don't remember, it was like last year, the sheet that we were looking at, by the time you added it all together, it was over $1 million. But when there was a person there, that didn't happen. Is that the case, or am I misinformed?
No, it was always a system. It was controlled differently in the past is all. There was a director of solid waste
Need more people.
and we still collect money there. We still have someone at the landfill. It was set up differently in the way the collections were done. We're looking at going back to a system
Cora,
We need it,
like
yeah.
I
that
think
at this
Mhm.
time. with
there's been
the
a
director
committee
down there.
meeting on this, and we're going to have a discussion, probably in executive. We were gonna try to do it today, but there were some questions that needed to be answered. So we'll probably do it in a session in the executive committee.
What topic are you talking about?
About
Solid-
recollecting the solid.
Fee
Solid waste
collection?
hauler
Yeah.
fees.
Right.
Delinquent fees?
So
So
you
I
told
can
me
put it
about
on the
contract, so
agenda.
we can't really, some of the stuff we can't say publicly,
Right,
So-
so we'll,
so.
but that'll be a
bring it
discussion
up.
that we'll
Right.
have this month.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Kitty, you had your hand up? Oh, Bill?
Thank
Is
you.
that it? Anything
That's
else?
it.
Well, just the recycling totals for the month, September is 377.36 tons at $29,988.01 revenue.
Good.
Who gave you the penny?
All of them. I didn't take a name, Gene.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, any public comment? Okay, Jonathan. Oh, motion to adjourn, thank you.
Jonathan?
I'll second.
Second.